Bom dia a todos. Obrigada pela presença. Sejam bem-vindos ao segundo dia do 14º Seminário Internacional NUTAU 2022, um evento realizado pelo NUTAU, que é o Núcleo de Pesquisa em Tecnologia da Arquitetura, do Urbanismo e do Design da Universidade de São Paulo, do qual sou coordenadora científica. Eu vou ser a mediadora agora dessa sessão e vou convidar o nosso palestrante internacional. Ele vai apresentar em inglês, eu creio que não seja um problema. Essa palestra vai ficar disponível depois no YouTube para todos. Deixa eu convidá-lo aqui. So, good morning, Jian Kang. It's a pleasure to receive our first international speaker, Professor Jian Kang, professor from the University College London. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm going to introduce you, and then you can start your presentation. So Professor Jian Kang obtained his first and master degree from Tsinghua University and his PhD from the University of Cambridge. He's fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering and member of the Academia Europaea, the Academy of Europe. He has been a full professor since 2003 and worked in the field of architectural and environmental acoustics for more than 35 years, with more than 80 research projects, more than 800 publications, more than 90 engineering and consultancy projects, and more than 20 patents. He's president of the International Institute of Acoustics and Vibration, and he also chairs the European Acoustics Association Technical Committee for Noise and the European Coast Action on Soundscape of European Cities and Landscapes. He's recipient of the Advanced ERC Grant Award, currently working internationally on developing soundscape indices. So, thank you, Jian Kang, for joining us. Now you can start your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Rennie, for your kind invitation, and it's my great pleasure to share my experience or share my screen with you. And now I'll start to share.
Yes, it's appearing. Okay.
Yeah, can you see
you
it
just
now?
need to click on hide to hide this banner. Yes, it's okay. Now it's with you. I'm going to hide myself. It's an honor for us to have you here.
Thank you, Rennie. As discussed, my talk today is about soundscape progress in the last 50 years and future challenges. I'll cover three aspects. One is briefly talk about progress in the last 50 years in soundscape research and practice, and then I'll focus on the current development and using our group's work as an example. And then I'll briefly talk about the future challenge. This talk is based on IntNoise 2021 keynotes with some slight modifications. And firstly, progress in the last 50 years from concept to practice. And we start from pioneering work in soundscape by Murray Schafer, as you all know if you are in the soundscape field. And his work starts from this in 60s and early 70s. And Murray Schafer is a musician and a composer. So his work is always about relations between ear, human being, sound, environment, and society. So basically, he is pioneering to expand from noise control to a further wider field. And the focus of his work and his fellow followers' work is about recording sound and describing sound environment. And one of the typical famous work he did was in 70s. He led a group of people on a European tour and made a detailed investigation of soundscape of 5 villages. And later, some years later, those 5 villages were revisited and see what's the soundscape change. So you can get a flavor of what kind of work Mary Schaefer and other similar researchers are doing. It's mainly about describing and evaluating a place in terms of sound. And later, the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology were founded. And again, this is a group of people who are more interested in recording and describing, evaluating sound environment, especially natural sound environment, or also including urban, but natural sound environment is also a key part. And there's also a journal by the society called Soundscape, and maybe some of you have read it. And from this typical cover, you can see the focus of this kind of work. And then this has been carried out for some years. And 20 years ago, there was a publication of from European Parliament and of the Council on the directives of environmental noise. And this famous END has generated a number of major actions. One action is to require every member state to generate noise map everywhere. And another action is to ask member state, and this in turn ask every city, every area to identify quiet areas to protect. So because this is law, so many people start to follow this action about identify quiet areas to protect. But now the problem comes, if we only identify quiet areas by using sound level, this is far from enough. And research has already shown that noise annoyance only depends on about 30% of physics, which means sound level. So whether a place is quiet or not, whether sound quality is good or bad, also depending on many other factors. And in that period, we did work to show this. This is a survey we did in Sheffield, UK, in open public spaces. And we measured the sound level and also asked people 2 questions. One is how loud here is, and that's the answer. And you can see with increase of sound level we measured, people do feel it's louder. But we also ask people another question: how good, what is sound quality in this place? And that's the answer. You can see below about 65 to 70 dB, which is quite high. There's no influence from the sound level to the quality of the place, sound quality of the place. And above that, there's a high correlation. That means if it's above a certain sound level, then people do feel it's uncomfortable. You need to reduce sound level first, whatever sound is. But under that, physics doesn't play a role anymore, and it's all about other factors like what kind of people and who are you coming with, what kind of time of the day, this all matters. So on the one hand, there's a group of people pioneered by Mary Schaefer, look at sound environment from perspective music and this perception perspective. On the other hand, there's another kind of line which is from the engineer side. And now, because of this EU directive of force people to identify quiet area to protect, now 20 years ago, these two lines meet together. And the result is engineers need to think about perception, and the traditional soundscape researchers need to get into practice. They all need to cross their comfort zone. And this took some years, and one action was different people come together to derive or to form an ISO standard. Because the first thing to do is, if we both cross line, we need to see where's the common ground. What do we mean about the soundscape, and how we can use this to solve real problems. And after some years effort, there was first part of ISO standard on soundscape published, and we spent several years, 4 years, to define soundscape. Just one sentence mainly. Soundscape is acoustic environment as perceived or experienced or understood by a person or people in context. So you can see every word matters. Is acoustic environment is there, physics is there, but as a perceived, experienced, or understood. So that's important. And by a people or a person or people, you come by yourself or in a society. And this must be in context. Context is a quite important factor. So in that case, soundscape is different from acoustic environment because it's beyond, because it's perceived. And soundscape promote a holistic approach beyond physics. And sound now regarded as resources rather than just a waste. And also focus on wanted sound rather than just unwanted sound. So that's the key features of soundscape: perception and overall sound environment rather than just noise control. And this promote the whole field from engineering, from pure engineering noise approach to multidisciplinary approach, and also from traditional like music, natural sounds focus to overall sound environment, to engineering solution side. And the impact of soundscape has different dimensions. Firstly, it health impact. The soundscape will promote supportive environment rather than just prevent degradation of the functional health. So rather than say this environment after engineering approach will not become worse, and this is about make it better. So it's positive rather than reduce negative impact. And in terms of culture, soundscape can promote sense of place, and is important dimension of tourism, and also for conservation and the restoration is very important. And in terms of economy, rather than say we reduce noise to prevent the reduction of house price, now we can say we design sound environment better to make the house price increase, and also reduce the cost caused by antisocial behavior, for example. So basically, it's all about promote positive rather than only reduce negative. And in the last 20 years, after this push from EU directive on environment noise, the publication in soundscape has increased very sharply. Even there is inflation of the total publication numbers. This is much higher than the total kind of normal inflation rate. And there are a number of special sessions on soundscape in conferences, not only acoustic conference, but also planning conference, for example. And there are a range of research projects on soundscape in different countries, and also a range of practice projects in different cities, including London, Berlin, Stockholm, Antwerp, for example. And also there are several networks on soundscape, including EU Soundscape Network COST, and also American also has a network on soundscape, and also UK has Noise Future, now have UCAN network. So I hope this give you very brief introduction about what happens in last 50 years from 60s to now. Basically, it's from concept to kind of practice. Now I'd like to focus on the current development with our team as example. So I'll present this with this framework. So basically, what is basic understanding of soundscape as basic research, and secondly, collection and documenting. This is next step. You have basic research, you collect the data, and harmonizing is about standardize the soundscape, and then creating and designing, and then outreaching. So basically, this is kind of 5 natural steps from basic definition to policy and general public. This is based on the Soundscape Cost Networks work package. So let's start from understanding and exchanging basic research side. This is the well-known ISO standard, soundscape standard diagram about the process of soundscape. So we have sound source, and this get into acoustic environment, and then we hear it, and then our brain will interpret the information, and then we'll have response. This will cause outcome. For example, you don't like it, then you leave. And all this is affected by context, depending on which kind of environment where you are, influence this process part, also sound source part. So based on this basic framework, although the framework was derived later, but the basic understanding of this kind of framework has been there for a long time. A range of work has been done in terms of basic research. A lot of work has been done in terms of soundscape evaluation. Different kind of spaces has been considered, including urban public spaces, which is very common, but also other places like underground shopping street and cycle paths, for example. And a range of sound sources has been considered, from noise sources such as industrial noise to natural sound. And a range of people have been considered, including everyday users, but also special groups. And so you can see a large amount of work has been carried out. That's why there are so many papers. A lot is on this aspect, soundscape evaluation. So this is kind of typical outcome. For example, what's people's ranking about different kind of sound sources? What people what kind of sound source people prefer? And this is white areas favorable, gray areas neutral, and black is annoying. People don't like it. So you can see this kind of ranking. Although this kind of work, if it's done a long time ago, is novel, people won't see it. But now, if you do it again, you must find a different place. Otherwise, it's become kind of common sense to know this kind of ranking. And in terms of physiology side, the work has been done in recent years, but the work is still limited. People have done heart rate, skin conductivity, this kind of aspect, see what's the effect of different sound on those parameters. This is typical results. This is exposure to a sound with different time, and this is different kind of sound. All these are different physiological indicators. You can see different sound. I wouldn't go to details of this one, but you can see different sound has very different reaction in terms of physiological aspect. Work has also been done in terms of fMRI scanning, or how our brain react to sound. This one is we give people same sound, which is artificial sound, but a different visual information, because this sound like seaside, also sound like motorway, and we found with same sound, due to different visual stimulation, actually the brain activity changes for the sound part because of visual information. So this shows audio-visual interaction. And evaluation has also been done to different aspects, like all these red text are keywords like attention, emotion, expectation, behavior, social, meaning, mental health, valuation. So you can see in terms of soundscape evaluation, a lot of work has been done in different aspects, in very much depth. And multi-sensory interaction has also been studied, because we can't say we study sound, therefore we ignore other senses. And for example, audio-visual interaction I just mentioned for the scanning work, and this is smell and sound interaction. We did work along a busy road. Some section has trees with nice smell, some don't. So because sound is the same, but the smell is different, we can see what's the impact of smell on sound perception. And this is results. You can see with different street section, there are differences in terms of auditory perception because of smell, or vice versa. This shows smell-sound interaction. And this is thermal and sound interaction. Basically, this is thermal perception, and we ask people to listen to low noise level, low sound level, medium, and high, with different sound type. Each little box is different kind of sound. So if there's no difference between different kind of sound, only thing is about sound level, then it'll be all just a single line. But you can see these little boxes have different strengths. That means because of different type of sound, people's thermal sensation, thermal comfort become different. So if you feel, for example, hot or cold, and if you change different kind of sound type, your thermal sensation could change. And another aspect of basic research is about the description of sound environment. So what, as a designer, what are designable? And based on a lot of survey, we derived this system about designable factors. What matters for designers? For example, sound. There are different aspects like sound level, spectrum, how it changes with time, and location and source movement, and also psychological characteristics like whether it's a sound mark or what's the meaning of it. And another designable factor is about space. We can design reverberation of space, reflection pattern, and also the relative environment, like is a quiet spot in a noisy area or vice versa. And we can't design people, but we can, according to people's characteristics, to design for them. So that's another aspect. And also other aspects like temperature, humidity, lighting, visual, as I said, there are interactions between them. So we should design it accordingly. So that's design description for a different aspect. Another framework which was developed was the taxonomy of different sound sources. So if we look at one site, we should have a system to describe the sound sources. Another aspect of basic research is about modeling. We can describe a place, but how we predict what people are thinking. Because soundscape is all about people's perception. So when we design an urban public space, for example, can we predict what our users will think about this place rather than designer? So for that, some work has been done about using artificial neural network, AI technique, because we did a lot of questionnaire surveys. We know what people are thinking about the place. And based on that, you can develop this artificial neural network model to predict a new place which is similar to the ones we surveyed. And this is based on affecting parameters like, for example, thermal affect the physical environment affect the soundscape evaluation, and different sources also affect. And based on that, you can predict people's perception. Another side of modeling is about how a place, for example, urban square, affect sound propagation, which is physical soundscape modeling. And for example, how size of urban square and height of building around it and the shape and absorption of the boundaries affect the sound field. Therefore, we can design this space accordingly. This is how all these parameters affect. This is source receiver distance. For example, if you are 20, 40, 60 meters away from fountain, by changing the square size from small to big, how much sound level will change. You can see by changing from 25 to 100 by 100, the sound level will reduce by 6 dB or 8 dB. And by increase the building height, the sound level will, same fountain, same distance from the fountain, will be increased by about 8 dB if you increase the building height from 6 to 50. And if you increase the absorption, then sound level will be reduced by about 10 dB from very hard boundary to very soft boundary. So that's first part. You can see a lot of work has been done in terms of basic research. But to move from this basic understanding of soundscape to real work, we need to have collection and documenting of soundscape. Some work has been done on this. There have been a lot of effort to establish soundscape database. One side is about recorded sound. For example, one database is this urban soundscape of the world. Another one is Soundscape New York City project, with always a lot of recordings. And currently we're also developing, based on the ERC SSD project, recorded sound across the world. And traditionally, all these databases were just the sound only, but as we discovered, there are a lot of interactions between sound and other factors. So now it's become essential to include visual information. And in the future, maybe we can even include other dimensions like smell. That's about sound. Another kind of database is about questionnaire surveys, because soundscape is all about people's perception. So a lot of surveys have been done, like EU Rurals project, or 10,000 survey have been done, and our current ERC SSD 4,000 questionnaire has been done worldwide. This is Rurals, this is our current one. So a lot of effort has been done to put all this into open source database platform, and to get everyone to use it, to analyze in different aspects. A third aspect of database is case studies. This is from this book, Soundscape of Built Environment, and this chapter to collect different examples, and range from city and subways to traffic management to rural soundscape. So shows how, some examples from the current project funded by HAT Foundation. Some are from this book. So we can see there are a range of examples soundscape approach can be used. So this needs everyone's effort to contribute, for example, to this project. That's a database we are currently doing. So if you have good soundscape examples, you can contribute to this database. So we can share among all the researcher practitioners on soundscape. So from basic research to collection or database of soundscape, another step is we need harmonizing and standardization. As I mentioned, there's ISO soundscape standard. Part 1 has been published in 2014, and Part 2 and 3 has been published in 2018 and 2019 respectively. One is about data collection and reporting requirement. Another one is about data analysis. And currently we are working on Part 4, which is design and intervention side. Along with ISO standards, we also need some protocols about how to carry out a survey, for example, recordings, partly based on ISO, but partly on other requirements. This is one publication about SSID protocol, about how to carry out soundscape measurements, recording, and also how to do questionnaire survey. In the recording is about how to make a recording of sound, and also how to record other aspects of environment, which is relevant to soundscape evaluation because there are some interactions. And the third aspect is about we need to develop a series of indicators of soundscape so we can compare different sites and evaluate the overall quality. And over the years, there have been different efforts like a fuzzy noise limit, tranquility rating, speech intelligibility, similarity index, clustering. And at the moment, our SSID project, which is a big European project based on advanced grant, we are developing a single index for soundscape. So basically, traditionally people use decibel, as I mentioned, and then there were efforts about loudness, noisiness, but still this is quite limited. And then there was a stage of using psychoacoustics factor to evaluate the sound quality, but that's still based on physics side. So our effort is to consider psychological, physiological, and acoustical and contextual factors. And work out what's the complex relation between them, and then develop some intermediate factors like inventiveness, vibrancy, and then this can be used to develop a single index so that can be used for ranking different designs or for planning purposes. So eventually, hopefully, this can replace decibel index, which has been used for 100 years, and to give a new index to integrate not only physical aspect, but also people's perception and also contextual factors, everything else, non-acoustical factors into the index to give a more accurate representative index called soundscape indices. And the next step is about creating and designing. With all this, how we really create and designing soundscape. To design soundscape, firstly, it's very important to think about the difference between traditional environment engineering approach in designing and soundscape designing, and also architectural designing. So basically, soundscape designing is somewhere between pure engineering design and also architectural or landscape design. And so to design this, we need a good design process. It's not like engineering design, we just need numbers. But for architecture design, it's maybe more subjective, and soundscape design is somewhere between. So we did the work about how should design process be, and this is about from starting to preparing and design and to the evaluation stage, and what need to be considered, who should be involved, and how should they be involved, and what kind of outcome should be. And in the same time, it's useful to develop some design guidance about very simple, like what should you consider first, and what, for example, reduce noise first until you reach something like 65, 70 dB, and then what you need to do step by step guidance. We also develop some guidance. Of course, we also need good example and design, as I mentioned, for the database side. So in addition to this process, we also need some design tools. So over the years, some design tools have been developed, for example, mapping tools. This looks like noise map, but actually we can also use this tool to map good sound, like how bird sound will distribute, and how we can design urban morphology, urban structure to promote bird sound in same time to reduce traffic. That's another kind of mapping tools. This is about how to classify different kind of sound sources, like artificial sound, machine sound, and human sound, for example, and then you can have this kind of map. Another kind of mapping tool is about predicting, as I mentioned before, the artificial neural network predicting the sound quality. And this is a map which shows predicted perception. For example, if someone or a group of people is at secondary education level, they will feel this place is quiet. If the people with higher education level, same place, same design, just people are different, they will feel this place is turned to be noisy. Then according to that, we can design for people accordingly. And another kind of tool is kind of management tool. This is tool we developed for delivery sound. Because of the change of supermarket from big outside city to some smaller one everywhere in city. So there are a lot of delivery sound problem and complaints. And the problem is, depending on the context, where this small shop is and what kind of people are there. Same sound, same delivery, standard delivery sound, get quite different complaints. So our idea is to integrate this contextual and the sound and the people factor and predict if you have new site, what kind of complaint or possible complaint it could be. So this is using soundscape approach to predict or to do noise management. The final tool is organization tools. So we know in concert hall design, in the design stage, we can listen to the sound before it's built. And we can also use this kind of technique to predict urban or other kind of soundscape design. So before you use the soundscape, you can listen to it. And the challenge for this is for concert hall is only one source, and you have fixed receiver, source are not moving, and also you can wait for a long time because concert hall is very expensive. But for soundscape design, there's so many sources and they're all moving, and you can't wait because this is not concert hall expensive project. But the good news is you don't need to be that accurate, you just have a general feeling. So the research side is about how to simplify the algorithm to make it effective, but also fast. The final stage is outreaching. We do basic research, standards, and then the design, and finally, we need to benefit general public, and also we need the policy to implement all these results. So because of this soundscape movement or requirement from the EU directive, actually there has been a lot of policy change. For example, UK policy on noise was changed from noise reduction or mitigation now to noise management. Now the UK policy is about the management. And also recently, in Welsh government's document, it has been changed another further step from noise management to noise and soundscape action plan. So not only manage noise, but also integrate good sound in. So that's a big step change. And this has also been considered in general public. For example, some examples are built in terms of sound arts and to educate general public. And also some tools have been developed, such as noise capture by French colleagues. Everyone can use this to capture noise, capture sound, evaluate, and send to a server, and then we can compare different data. So I hope this will give you a flavor about what is involved on soundscape, from basic research to very general kind of policy. Now I spent the final slot to discuss about the future challenge, long-term challenge, because some short-term challenge has been discussed in my second part about current study. In terms of challenge in next 10, 20, 40 years, 50 years, what there could be, just to give you some my thought to discuss. So firstly, the new industrial revolution will influence sound environment a lot. Now we have a smarter living environment with many sensors. So sensors everywhere, indoor, outdoors. And in that case, I think one tendency would be we could have a smart soundscape. For example, if you have sensor, depending on the situation and different people, the sound can also be adjusted or modified according to personal requirements. For example, if you see group of people with different age or education level, whatever, and maybe the soundscape can also be changed. And people, of course, people can also choose different place. So we can have more inclusive design in that line. Another development of Industrial Revolution is the vehicles will become quieter. We have electrical cars, electrical trains, and the quieter aircraft, quieter equipment at home. So the assumption is when the world becomes quieter, we'll be happier. So I remember 10 years ago, maybe 15, in an internoise conference, acousticians worried if the world become quieter, maybe we don't need to do anything. We lose our job. But the pandemic gave us a golden opportunity to test whether this is true or not. So during the lockdown in London, the noise level certainly reduced a lot by 10 or more dB. So people's assumption is, okay, people will be happier, but actually the result is just opposite. So this is a comparison between before and after lockdown in London in terms of noise complaints City Council received. You can see after lockdown, the noise level, noise complaints received much higher than before lockdown, very surprisingly. And this similar result has also been noticed in other cities, not only London. And the reason is when the world becomes quieter, some sound sources become noisier. So now you can hear your neighbor's lawnmower more, and your neighbor's television more, therefore you complain. So it's always, this shows the importance of soundscape design. It's not the quieter, the better. And another big change is climate change, how it will affect our soundscape. This is just some initial thought, and I think everyone can give more thought. What happens if London becomes Madrid? And let's see the cultural difference between people's preference of different sound sources. This is a comparison we did some time ago between a city in Italy, in UK, and in Germany. We asked people about different sound sources. What do you feel? Favorable, neutral, annoying. You can see in this particular place in Italy, for water, only less than 30% of people like it, water feature, and a lot of people feel it's neutral. But in the UK and Germany, a lot of people, 70-80% of people like it, and a small percentage of people think it's neutral. For surrounding species, it's just opposite. Half here in Italy, and most people in Germany and UK don't like surrounding species, other people's talking. So with this big difference, cultural difference, even within Europe, so we can see with climate change, maybe this will affect our soundscape design. And this cultural difference is even greater between Europe and Asia. We ask people, do you like bird sound from outside? 70 people in Sheffield in the UK like it, and a small percentage in Beijing and Taipei like it. Music from outside, only 4% of people like it, but 26% in Taipei and 43% of people in Beijing like it. So you can see this greater cultural difference, which could be a result of climate change. Finally, it's about different lifestyle, living style. With post-pandemic time, people turn to work from home more, and this is a framework we developed for indoor soundscape. For people who are in the soundscape field, maybe you will know the famous certain complex model for outdoor soundscape, but for indoor soundscape, the dimension, this is outdoor standard, like pleasant, annoying, eventful, uneventful. This is dimension you evaluate soundscape outdoors. And for indoors, it's quite different. It's comfortable, annoying, that's the same, but full of context, empty is for indoor. So we can imagine for different places, like schools and other places could be different. With our tendency of work from home more, we need to consider that as well. So to conclude, I hope I showed you the tendency of noise control to soundscape creation this in last 50 years, and also from basic soundscape concept to practice, especially because of the EU directive requirement. So last 50 years is that kind of change, and current situation is a lot of work has been done, but still much to be explored, especially toward practice. And in the next 50 years, we need to consider some major challenges, including industrial revolution and climate change and different lifestyles. So finally, I'd like to thank all the research team members and external partners, especially the cost network partners, for their contribution in various aspects of this talk, and also different funding bodies, and also the kind invitation to deliver this talk. Thank you very much. That's my talk. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yan Kang. It was an excellent lecture. We have some questions here. Let me find some of them. Okay, one from Michael Klein. He asked about the soundscape database collection by several people. How have you been standardizing the recordings with different low-cost equipment?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So depending on what kind of information is useful, if we only want to know what kind of sound are there, we don't need to have very expensive equipment. iPhone or mobile phone should be okay. But if we want to know the sound level or even want to calculate the psychoacoustical factors, then we need high quality recording. So at the moment, for example, we are doing national park soundscape in the UK, and also doing this beyond in different European countries. We ask general public to make recordings, wherever they are, what kind of equipment, what they are. As long as there's a sound, you can identify whether it's a dog or water, then that's fine. But we also have a special kind of requirement. If you use high quality recording, then you can put in a place and identify that. So this can be used in different purposes. So the answer is we should not exclude people who are recording use low cost equipment. They are useful in most cases.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
He has also another question, that is how to take into account memory issues about soundscapes in lab tests, and what are the main limitations found?
Yeah, very good question. I think depending on the research question, you can always ask people about what's your background, what's your memory. Certainly, that's a very important aspect, and also what's your expectation for the place. So all this need to be considered, really depending on research question. If needed, if that's a part of a research question, this need to be considered, asked for lab testing.
Yes. And Rafael Andrade has also 2 or 3 questions, and he said, as you said, the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology was focused on natural sounds. is it correct to assume that they were not so concerned about human perception at first?
Not really, because soundscape was about people's perception. But sometimes in some of the work of acoustic ecology, there should be a focus. The focus on recording and presenting. But I'm not saying they are ignoring people's perception. But what we could say is acoustic ecology is less concerned about acoustic design, engineering side, which is another part we really need to focus on after EU directive.
Yes. And another question from Rafael is, what's the main factor for the change of focus on soundscape research from natural sounds to urban environments?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are several aspects. One is we need to consider human-related sound more, and secondly, we need to consider urban element more, like street or square. How does it affect sound propagation, and also what's the people expectation if they are in urban environment? So basically, yeah.
Yes. And one more question.
Sound, environment,
But,
and
sorry.
people. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And another question from Rafael is, are contextual factors objective data? Does it include cultural aspects of the local of interest?
Yeah, that's a good question. At the moment, actually, we are discussing about contextual factors. So, yeah, I think it should include cultural aspect. So, if you look at the ISO diagram, the sound factor and the perceivers aspect, like my brain, myself. So these are in different category, but everything else should be considered as a contextual factor. So cultural aspect should be part of it. But keep in mind, this is quite hot topic, and people are still discussing it, and we can exchange ideas later.
Yes. So let me tell, Rafael and Michael are my master students, and they
Okay.
are very happy with your presentation. Yes. And we have some more questions. One from Erickson. Erickson asked the professor how your country regulates the noise from gardening equipment.
I don't think there's a specific regulation on that, but this could be a part of the overall regulation. I think general regulation will cover gardening equipment. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you shouldn't generate noise before 11 by certain dB. So, yeah.
And the last question is from Lucas Sampaio. He said, thanks for the talk, Professor. Considering soundscape preferences, how do you see soundscape design in relation to eventually imposing sounds that are seen as positive for some but negative for others? And how do you compromise?
Yeah, I think that's a key issue for soundscape. So we need to consider everyone, not consider average. So um, when we present soundscape, for example, questionnaire survey results or prediction results, we need to consider a distribution rather than average up. So half people like it, half people hate it, therefore it's neutral. That's not right. We need to objectively present certain people like it, certain people don't like. But I suppose your question is about how we compromise. Then once we know we need to consider everyone, not average, then we can have some designs. For example, we have different zones. Some are good for these people who like it. Some are, for example, children and old people. We know children people like artificial sound or don't mind. They don't like bird sound much. Older people like bird sound. Therefore, in an urban park, we can have different zones rather than unique everywhere. So we can satisfy more people. The people have a choice. I suppose that's design side of it. Yeah, we can think more about inclusive design more.
Yes. So I guess you answered all the questions. One more time, I'm going to thank you. It was a pleasure and an honor for having you with us. Now I'm going to invite everybody for the next session. The next session will be in another link. So the link is in the comments on YouTube. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rani. And also very nice to discuss with everyone and keep in touch. Bye-bye, everyone.
Ok, bye. Então, eu vou encerrar aqui essa sessão. Eu espero todos na próxima sessão. O link está aqui nos comentários. Até já!